questions. But today, we're going to mix it up a bit. And I don't know how this is going to go. Again, like the teaching and the breaking it up, I don't know how it's going to go. But I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to try and tell a couple of jokes. Try is the key word, but I'm going to try and tell a couple of jokes. They're Christian jokes. Okay, I've been looking for these for a while because they're to do with church. We're going to see how it goes, okay? Ready? You guys ready? Yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, ready? So a preacher said to his congregation, I want everyone who wants to go to heaven to stand up. So everyone stands up, except for this one old man at the front. I'm that keen, mate. There we are, look. So he said again, I said everybody who wants to go to heaven, stand up. And this old man at the front row, he just didn't want to get up, he remained seated. So finally the preacher said, Brother Williams, I said everyone who wants to go to heaven, stand up. And the old man said, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were getting a group together now. I tried. Right, next one. This is the last one you'll be glad to hear. One Sunday morning, a mother went up to wake her son up and tell him it's time to get ready for church. To which he replied, I'm not going. Why not, she asked. I'll give you 2 reasons, he said. 1, they don't like me, and 2, I don't like them. His mother replied, well, I'll give you 2 reasons why you are going to church. 1, you're 54 years old, and the second one is you're the pastor. I thought that was quite good. I enjoyed that one. I thought that was quite good. So for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about this. Living light, living a life that shines. As church leaders, we can't be thinking, well, what can we give the church that's practical? How do we live as followers of Jesus? We've talked about encounters. People in the Bible who have encountered God and been changed and transformed by Him. Over the last couple of months, we've sort of been just following our hearts and doing what we think God's been put on our hearts to talk about. But now we want to really focus in on something, and that is, how do we live as Christians? How do we stand out? How do we have lights that shine to the community? Because let's face it, I've met a lot of Christians, I'm sure you have as well, who aren't that particularly nice. And there are people who aren't Christians, who aren't followers of Jesus, that look a heck of a lot more like Jesus than people who claim to follow Jesus. Has anybody met? Anyone know what I'm talking about? So what is it that makes us different? How do we live as followers of Jesus? How do we live lives that stand out as followers of Jesus? What makes us different? And you know what's interesting is we look at the Bible, and particularly if we look at the life of Jesus, when Jesus taught, he wasn't as interested in what people believed as how they lived their lives. If you look at the sermons that Jesus taught, Sermon on the Mount, or the parables that Jesus taught, he was very focused on how people lived their lives. Because how we live our lives reflects what we actually believe. And if you look at the books of the Bible, look at the New Testament, book of Romans, Colossians, Ephesians, which is what we're going through together as a church. All these books have got really good Bible theology, really rich theology of this is what you should believe as a follower of Jesus. But then if you go to the end of the book, it finishes off with, well, this is how you put that into action. This is how you live in light of the stuff that you should be believing. How we act and how we live is really important. Now, let me be clear. Faith is absolutely essential. I'm not taking anything away from that. We are saved, the Bible tells us, by grace through faith. It's our belief. We don't do anything to deserve the love of God, the forgiveness of God, the grace of God. It is given to us freely by what Jesus did for us on the cross. We don't do anything to deserve it. And we just receive that by simple faith and trust. But what we do after that is important. Because like I said, if that doesn't affect how we live, do we actually even believe it? James, the brother of Jesus, he wrote a letter to a group of churches not long after Jesus died and went back to heaven. And he writes this to these Christians. He says, so you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it's dead and useless. Now, someone may argue, well, some people have faith and other people have good works. But I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have any good works? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. You say you have faith, for you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe in God and they tremble in terror. What's James saying? It's not enough for you just to say that you're a Christian. It's not enough for you just to say that you believe in God. Because demons even believe in God. They believe that Jesus is the Son of God. It's not enough to just say, I believe. It has to be backed up with what we do And like James says, they go hand in hand. Faith and deeds, faith and works go hand in hand. Now, as Protestants, we've been very good at the faith stuff. We hang on to the faith, absolutely, and that's good and right that we do that. But unfortunately, we've almost left the works behind. And we focus so much on having faith and belief and trust that we've sort of forgotten that actually we need to back it up with our works. Our faith is demonstrated in what we believe. It's fundamentally important as followers of Jesus that we live these different lives, these lights that shine. You know, in the 2011 census, 10 years ago, I mentioned this before, in Ely, in our community, 47% of people who live in this community claim to be Christians. Now, all you've got to do is look outside there and know that that's probably not the case, because we know that our community is broken. So they would say, well, I believe in God. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. But yet there's a disconnect there on how that affects their lives. And that's true across the board. People say I'm a Christian. People say I'm a follower of Jesus. But yet it has absolutely no effect on how they live. We want to be people who are living lights, who live life different to other people. Belief in God isn't enough. So that's the bad news. What's the good news? Jesus, Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. As followers of Jesus, we've been given a light. The opportunity to live different, to do our lives different, our relationships different, our friendships different, our finances different, to do everything different, to stand out, to be different, to do things God's way. And you know what's really interesting? I think it's the next slide. This guy, Michael Green, he wrote a book called The Early Church and Evangelism. And he argues in that book that 80% or more of the evangelism that was done in the first couple of hundred years of Christianity was done by ordinary Christians, just like me and you, who lived their lives and explained their lives to their friends and family when they were asked. It wasn't done by come to church. It wasn't done by events or crusades or handing leaflets out or anything like that. It was done simply by living different. And when people asked, they just explained, this is why I live different. So with the explosion of the church in the last first couple of centuries of Christianity, yes, it was down to the power of the Holy Spirit, absolutely, and we know that. But according to Michael Green, it was also done by people living different and being different. If we want to impact this community, we have to look different. Because in this community, like I've just said, half the people say, yeah, I believe in God. And what? So what? What difference does it make? We have to live different. It's important that we live different. And Jesus calls us to live different. Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds and that they may glorify your Father in heaven. See, the purpose for us living different isn't just to glorify God. Of course it is that. But it's so other people can be invited in, so that they can also know what it is to have their sins forgiven, to have a relationship with Jesus, to be transformed so that they can glorify their Father in heaven. That's why it's important for us to live life different. And that's why it's important for us as followers of Jesus to talk about this stuff and to get real with this stuff and to be impacted by this stuff. So, before we start, just a little question for you to think about. How is your living going? How bright is your light? Do you find yourself saying, well, yeah, I believe in Jesus, but I don't tend to shine that bright outwardly? Or are you someone that is very passionate about Jesus and on fire for him and people can see that? Or maybe are you in between? And it's just a question for us to think about. Where are you? How bright is your light? How bright are you shining? In your workplace, at home, in this community, in your friendships, how bright are you shining? Just a question for us to ponder going forward. All right, so what's the first aspect that we're going to be talking about? What separates us from other people? What makes Christians distinctively different from other people? First one, forgiveness. What separates us from other people? Forgiveness. And I'm going to argue a little bit our willingness to forgive and always forgive. So, what is forgiveness? Someone tell me, what's your definition of forgiveness?
Forgetting or forgiving a wrong.
Forgetting a wrong, yeah?
Handing something over to God to deal with.
Handing over to something to God to deal with, yeah? Anything else? No, you happy with that? Okay, so this is it. Scott?
Coming to terms with the wrong.
Coming to terms with the wrong, yeah. Good, okay, so this is the Oxford definition. This is what the internet tells me forgiveness is. Stopping feeling angry or resentful towards something for an offence, a flaw, or a mistake. No longer feeling angry or wishing to punish someone for an offence, a flaw, or a mistake. Or cancelling a debt. And we as humans, we love forgiveness, don't we? We love it when we mess up and someone says, it's okay, I'll forgive you. We love it when, if we have a debt and someone says, it's okay, I'll cancel that debt. We love all that, don't we? Unless we're the person who has to do the forgiving. Unless we're the ones who have to let go of the anger and the frustration and have to mend that relationship. Unless we're the ones that have to cancel the debt. We love forgiveness, don't we? Forgiveness isn't something that comes natural to human beings as something we do. I'm sure you know this expression, hurt me once, shame on you. Hurt me twice, shame on me. We live in this world, we live in this culture where forgiveness is almost seen as a bad thing. If you forgive someone once, okay, I can deal with that. But if I have to forgive someone 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, they're just taking the mick now. It's a shame on me. We don't live in a world that is forgiving. What we tend to do when someone is forgiven is they change and then we forgive them. They say sorry, then we forgive. You can be fuming with someone, you can be cursing them, I can't believe they've done that. But as soon as they say sorry, 9 times out of 10 you're like, okay, I forgive you. And all that frustration, that anger, is sort of, you process that and it goes. But they have to initiate the change first. That's how it works. They've got to change, they've got to ask for it, they've got to initiate it. So what makes us as followers of Jesus different? What makes our forgiveness different? What makes us stand out to the world? Move on to the words of Jesus. Matthew chapter 18. So, Peter, big mouth Peter, he says what he thinks and thinks what he says. He comes up to Jesus and he says, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister? Up to 7 times? And Jesus says, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. There's a couple of things going on in this verse. Back in the time of Jesus, the religious people, the Pharisees, they taught that you should only forgive people up to 3 times. Sort of a 3 strikes and you're out sort of situation. And no more. 3 times and that's it. But Peter knows that Jesus is different. That Jesus is teaching different to what the others are saying. He knows that Jesus has got authority and power to preach different. Earlier on in Matthew, Jesus has said, I know the law says this, but I tell you this. Jesus has power and authority over the law and he's teaching different. So Peter just asks the question, Lord, is it 3 times or should it be more? Is it 7 times? And 7 is God's specific number in the Bible. It's the number of completion and perfection. And so Peter thinks, well, is this the new number? Is this the new number that Jesus is going to establish as being the number that people should be forgiven to? 7 times. And it's over double 6. 3, I'm sorry, it's more than 6. Is that what Peter is asking Jesus? And Jesus says, Peter, no, not just 7 times, but 70 times 7. And that's not a number. Other translations say it not 70 times 7, but 7 times 70 or 70 times 7 depends on the translation. It's not a number that Jesus is getting at, but it's a very Jewish way of saying never stop forgiving. Not 7, not 8, not 9, not 10, not 7,000, not 7 million. You never stop forgiving. Jesus, in typical Jesus fashion, he breaks the mold. No, Peter, you go further than what you ever thought you could go or should go. You never stop forgiving. So us as followers of Jesus, where does that leave us? What makes us stand out? What makes us living lights? To be people who are always ready to forgive. However much it hurts, however much it costs, however much we don't want to, it's the last thing that we want to do. We must be people who forgive. Who give up our right to be angry, who cancel the debt towards other people and say, I don't agree with it, I don't like it, but I forgive you. Because I want to follow Jesus, I want to be a living light. Like I said earlier, the way the world works is you change and then I'll forgive you. And Jesus breaks that mold as well. In John chapter 8, there's a story of this woman who's caught in adultery and she's brought before Jesus. And then they all leave, there's a bit of a situation. They all leave, and it's just Jesus and this lady. And this is what Jesus says to her. He says, "Woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you?" "No, Lord," she said. And Jesus said, "Well, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Now notice what Jesus didn't say. He didn't say, "Go sin no more, and then I'll condemn you." The forgiveness came first. "Woman, I don't condemn you. But out of that forgiveness, now go and sin no more." We forgive people not because they deserve it, not because they've earned it, not because they've changed, not even because they want it. We forgive people because that's what we're called to do as followers of Jesus, to give and to forgive and to love as much as possible, to never stop loving and to never hold a grudge. That's a very Jesus way of living and forgiving. All right, so there's a little spiel. Now, I've said enough. What I'd like you to do now is go into groups, to pairs, to threes, whatever you're comfortable with, and just talk through those questions. 3 questions. Say 5 minutes. Don't get through all of them. Don't worry. But just for us to think and ponder as followers of Jesus, what do you think about the concept of forgiveness? Is it necessary for us as followers of Jesus to do, or is it just something that we should do? Do we have to do it, or is it just something we should do? How do Christians live out the way of Jesus and of forgiving no matter what? How do we actually do that? And then finally, what are the dangers of being an unforgiving person? If I don't end up forgiving someone, if I become this person of unforgiveness, are there dangers to that? Is that a good thing for us to do as followers of Jesus? So get into groups, talk about it, think about it, 5 minutes, and we'll come back in together.